Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf on this beautiful spring-like Friday for yes, you saw that right, the title, A Friday Reads. Let me explain. If you're watching my videos, which you all do, of course, you might remember last week, Sunday, I had only a couple of books to talk about because most of the books that I finished were for the BookTube Prize, and so I decided to also talk about the books that I was currently reading. And then I figured, why am I not doing Friday Reads? Because now I never did Friday Reads ever because I always uploaded on Sunday and then Sundays and Wednesdays. So there was no Friday upload. But now I upload on Friday and Sunday. So there is really absolutely no reason for not doing a Friday Reads except for me being stupid and having to do a Friday Reads on Sunday, so to speak, to figure that out. But anyway, I will try. Whoops! Now the camera is shaking. Excitement. I will try this out, see whether it fits with my schedule, also see whether you like me doing the Friday Reads, because this will come replace the recent reads on Sundays, obviously, because I'm not talking about the big books that I finished on Friday and then again on Sunday. We'll see how it goes, but at least for now, this is a premiere, my first Friday Reads. And as the cool kids know, the cool kids who do Friday Reads regularly, it's customary to start with the books you have finished. So it was a kind of a mixed bag for me this week, but I did finish a fair amount of books, and I will not talk about all of them here because some will make it in the tops and flops. And I don't want to bore you with, repeating the same books over and over. So you can assume that the books I'm talking about now are not going to make it into the tops and flops. Anyway, like you care. The first one is a memoir, Patricia Lockwood, Priest Daddy, which was first published in 2017. Patricia Lockwood's new novel, Nobody's Talking About This, has just been longlisted for the Women's Prize. And I started that book, and it's just not interest me about a woman being famous for being famous. It bores me. But I thought I'm going to reread her memoir, which I quite liked, and I quite liked it the second time around as well. Quite liking it means for me 3 stars if you're talking in Goodreads terms. So it was not a bad book, but it didn't blow me away by any means. Like the title says, she's talking about mainly her upbringing and growing up in a household where the father is kind of a weird type of priest. First of all, he's married and has children, but he's still a Catholic priest. But you will learn in the memoir how that is possible. He's not a fraud, don't get me wrong, but he is weird. So he dresses only in shorts, and if at all. So it's kind of a weird situation. And Patricia and her husband have financial issues, and so after a decade or so living apart or living on her own, she and her husband come back because they don't have any money, and they live with her parents. I felt like I did the first time that until about half, it's not that huge, but it is about 300 pages. And I felt until page 180, 200, it was quite interesting, but then the whole situation and the kind of forced humor that she employs, at least for me, it came across as forced, just got a little old. So the second half was kind of too long. It was an interesting read, not a bad read. If you're, into this kind of story, I can certainly say give it a try. It was not a fabulous book by any means. The second book, also nonfiction, but which was much more of a success. And if you hear the author's name, you're probably not surprised, and that is Claudia Rankine, Just Us, which was published last year. Claudia Rankine is an American living in America, but born in Jamaica, that grammatically doesn't gonna make sense. I know that. So Claudia Rankine was born in Jamaica, but now lives in America. She's a poet, a playwright, activist, thinker. I recently reread her long poem, Citizen, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And this one is, like I said, her latest work. It's a work of nonfiction reflections on race on one side, and then some additional remarks or pictures on the other. So it's not poetry. It's more a long essay, very personal reflections on race relations. She recounts what happens to her when she stands in line at the airport, or when she, queues for first class in an airport, in a shopping mall, what happens with friends in restaurants. So she starts with the very personal, but of course it wouldn't be Claudia Rankine if she didn't broaden it and reflect on it in a quite a deep way. I thought it was really interesting to read her, the way she makes the personal political, which if you are a feminist, you know that everything personal is political. We know that since, long time. But she has her very unique way of talking about these things. And she is never, I mean, you can feel that she gets annoyed by things, but she has this extreme calm. I don't know, maybe she's a Buddhist or something, which I find amazing. And it's very informative, by the way, also. It's also very heavy, so I'm going to put it down now. If you haven't read it, I'm certainly can recommend it. But if you have never read Claudia Rankine before at all, I would first start with Citizen, because this book is really very good, but Citizen is brilliant. And the third book I want to talk to you about that I finished is another try of mine, failed, I would say, a failed attempt to find some fantasy that I like, and that is this really gorgeous looking book by Rebecca Roanhorse called Black Sun. It's the first in a series, Sky and Earth. I always mix up whether it's Earth and Sky, of course. And I know that I mixed this up when I hauled the book in my book haul, published last year. Rebecca Roanhorse is an indigenous author who writes sci-fi and fantasy. I've never read her before, but this one sounded interesting because it takes its cues from pre-Columbian American lore. So you have this city of Tova with this female priest, head priestess, or however you want to call it, and there is a solstice coming up, but also a sun eclipse. And you have the crow gods, and then you have other factions, but you also have a young man who was introduced by his mother to the fact that he is a god, that he will become a god, who travels to the city. You have a pirate, the chief pirate, a very feisty woman. It had a good mixture of stuff, and of course everything will converge then on the island. And again, I'm hitting you over the head. Everything will converge on the city of Tova during the summer solstice and sun eclipse. My issue with this book, it was, I think I could have really liked it, but like I said, it's the first in a series. And it's not the first time that this happened to me when I read a book like this, that I think the author or the publisher absolutely wanted to make this a series. So what they do is they just draw out the plot like chewing gum. This is not, what happens in here is not worthy of a whole book. It's just not. It would have been like a third, maybe, but then you don't have a series. So they they draw it out and draw it out, and that's really boring. At least for me, that was really boring. So unfortunately, despite the good ideas and the really very decent writing and the gorgeous cover, I will certainly not continue with this series. Yeah. So these were the books that I finished, and I didn't start anything last week, but I will definitely finish 2 more books this week. I'm quite far along in these 2 books already. And the first one is another non-fiction book that I'm buddy reading with Heidi from my reading life, and that is White Feminism by Koa. Here you go, Koa Beck, published earlier this year in January. Koa Beck is a Black American journalist. She was editor-in-chief of Jezebel. She did features for Vogue and Marie Claire. And this is her first book, and it is about white feminism and who is left behind. We are almost done. We will finish this weekend, and I will certainly talk more about this book once we are finished. But for now, I can say that it's interesting. She has really done a lot of research. You learn quite a bit about historical facts of feminism. She compares white feminism and other grassroots activist movements. You learn a lot about the suffragettes and about how class and race and gender play a role. But it lacks a bit of focus. This book, I would say. But yeah, my final thoughts, I will hold my final thoughts until I finished it and until I discussed it with Heidi, of course. And the last book I want to talk to you about is a collection of short stories, Asako Serizawa, Inheritors, which was published last year. I'm buddy reading this with Sean from Sean the Book Maniac. That is, Sean has already finished, so I'm sure he will talk about it in his Friday reads. And I have read the last story, but I want to reread some of the stories in order to make up my mind about the book. Asako Serizawa is a Japanese-born author, but she now lives in Boston, so I didn't forget to mention the translator. The book was written in English, and it's a debut collection. It is kind of interconnected short stories because it's all the stories are about the same family. In the beginning, there is this extensive family tree from, the great-grandparents born in the 1900s down to the great-grandchildren born in 2010-ish. And not everybody, not every person in the family gets a story. Some get even 2, but it's not told chronologically, so you don't get, the great-grandparents first, but it jumps in time, but together it wants to paint a picture of the story and the history of this particular family, with an emphasis on some important political topics like the Second World War, especially the atomic bomb and the aftermath, but also the relation between Japan and Korea, immigration, Japanese people immigrating to the US. So it's quite a lot that the author wanted to pack into this book, and I think it is meant to work as a whole, and I really have to think about it, whether that worked for me, because not all the stories were good, to say the least. Anyway, so this was it. My very first ever Friday reads, maybe a bit bumpy, this road to the Friday reads, but thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it nevertheless. And as always, I'm very much looking forward to your comments, and I will see you all soon in the next one.